Well, howdy, Driven Youth. This is the 42nd installment of the Exile Challenge, and we are now in Ezra chapter 10. There is a saying that Dwight L. Moody once said. He said, "The world has yet to see what God can do with the man fully consecrated to him. By God's help, I aim to be that man." And what a statement. I'm reminded of this when I read Ezra chapter 10. Ezra came into a situation where he found that the children of Israel were being disobedient to the Lord, to the direct commands of the Lord, not to intermarry with those of that land, those who are of a different religion, those who are a different race. They were intermarrying with Egyptians, with Ammonites, Moabites, so on and so forth. And those women that the men were marrying were pagans. They were following other gods. They did not follow the Lord, the God of the heavens and the earth, the God of the Old Testament, and they were being disobedient. Well, as you saw in Ezra, or read in Ezra chapter 9, Ezra goes and he confesses the sins of the people of Israel. Even though he didn't commit it, but he was so grieved by what they had done. He had recognized that God had kicked them out of the land in the first place for sins like that, for intermarrying, as God strictly told them not to do. And he grieved and he confessed the sins of the people and he pleaded with God in his mercy. Well, we find Ezra here in Ezra chapter 10, who was a man who was dedicated to the Lord, who wanted to please the Lord in all that he did, who took God's word seriously and took sin seriously. And as a result of how he reacted, the people responded. The people began to see Ezra grieving, fasting, pulling his hair, his beard, all those kinds of things. And so it begins here that while Ezra prayed and made confession, weeping and casting himself down before the house of God, a very great assembly of men, women, and children gathered to him out of Israel, for the people wept bitterly. So what happened? The people saw one man and his dedication to the Lord, taking his word seriously and taking sin seriously. And as a result of his example and his dedication, they responded. Wow, what a reaction. And so a revival took place in the land of Israel because of one man. Because one man took God's word seriously and took sin seriously. And that's basically the application that I want to bring out of this chapter, is that you and I can have an impact on other people simply by taking God's word seriously in our lives, applying it to our life, and taking sin seriously. And the people will look, will observe, and God willing will follow our example. What about you? Do you take God's word seriously? And do you take sin seriously? Because if you do, you can have a great impact on the church, on our church specifically. I hope that we can all say in a similar fashion as D.L. Moody, that the world has yet to see what God can do with a man or woman fully consecrated to him. By God's help, I aim to be that man. I pray that God would use us in that way. So brother and sister, as you've read the book of Ezra, this is a book where God, through his divine sovereignty, has worked in the life of the children of Israel, has been true to his promise that at the end of that 70-year captivity in Babylon, that he would allow them to come back to the land. And this is a book recounting that, God being true to his promise, and God making sure that his promise comes to fruition. And he uses the kings and the governments of that day in order to bring about his plan. God sovereignly turns the hearts of the kings to favor the children of Israel and puts into the heart of the king to grant favor to the children of Israel. Still, the kings did what they wanted to do, but God worked in such a way. We see that the children of Israel weren't just puppets on the string, or weren't just kicking by leaning back on their laurels, or being lazy because they were just waiting for God's sovereignty to kick in. No, they planned, they organized, they got everything in order. They worked, they built the temple, they planned expeditions or excursions from Babylon to Jerusalem. They did all these things. They exerted energy, and God used them to bring about his plans and purposes. And we see a man, through the example of Ezra, a man who was serious about God's word, who was serious about sin, and as a result had a great spiritual impact on the people of Israel. And I pray that you and I can be that kind of person, because the world has yet to see a man or woman totally consecrated to God. Do you aim to be that kind of person? I hope you do. Well, it was a wonderful stroll through the book of Ezra. Maybe it was the first time you've read that. Maybe it was the first time you read it in a long time. And so I plan this. So this is what I plan to do for this Exile challenge. As if we're shifting, we're coming back to church. I think what we're going to do is we're going to do one more book together at least. Okay. So let's go back to the New Testament, and I know this is a book of interest. So let's go ahead and read together the book of Revelation. Okay. So let's read together the book of Revelation. I'm going to start tomorrow in Revelation chapter 1, and we're just going to keep on going. There's 22 chapters there, and it should be interesting. Hopefully I can make these little devotional thoughts a little bit shorter than what they have been. So we'll try to keep it under at least 7 minutes. So I'll do the best you can. You can pray for me with that. It just means I have to be more prepared. Next day tomorrow, Revelation chapter 1. I hope you'll join me. God bless.